Everyone, happy Tuesday. I hope you're all doing well despite the new challenges that we're all facing. Thank you for joining today's webinar on leading through a crisis. This session will be recorded and recording will be available after. As we go along, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we will do our best to address them at the end of the session. With various events happening around the globe, and not to mention in the APAC region, resilience within organizations has become key to navigating such uncertain times. And with the safety and well-being of employees in the limelight, crisis leadership is now imperative in the ever-changing corporate landscape. My name is Samuel, and I'm the Senior Business Development Manager from Workplace Options. Joining us from Thailand for today is Sudawang Kumar, also known as Sandy, the Wellbeing and Resiliency Lead at TDCX. As an advocate for change empowerment, Sandy brings along with her 17 years of corporate and mental health experience, coupled with an extensive involvement in community support. Here with me in Singapore, Crystal Tang from Mercer Marsh Benefits, the wellness lead within the Singapore Health Consulting team. Specializing in wellness consulting, Crystal designs wellness solutions for clients and also manages partnerships to match clients with support that delivers results. She is highly passionate about the education of mental wellness in the corporate sector and advocates health and wellness of women. Also from Singapore, we have Jing Chen from Workplace Options. Jing is the APAC clinical team lead and supports clinicians globally, managing teams in both Singapore and China. In her 6 years with Workplace Options, she has provided assessments and counseling support to countless participants. She also holds 2 master's degrees, one in counseling and guidance from Nanyang Technological University and another in social work from Fudan University. Last but not least, we have Winnie Wee as our moderator for today's session. Winnie possesses more than a decade of extensive clinical experience in the mental health field and applies her strategic vision, clinical savvy, and passion for world-class customer service standards here at Workplace Options. She's also currently one of the only few certified employee assistance professionals in Singapore. With that, I will hand over to Winnie.
Thanks, Sam, for that very lovely introduction of all of us. Because we only have 1 hour today, I will jump right in and I will begin by a definition of what a crisis is. So a crisis is defined by great difficulty or anger and the need to make a difficult decision. And as we are all living through a pandemic right now, and many of us believing that this world is now an endemic, it is only natural and expected that we all are going through some forms of crisis ourselves, whether it is mild, moderate, or severe, both at home, in homes or in our work lives. So, which is why I'm so excited to be able to meet with and speak with our 3 panelists today. They bring a great wealth of experience in their fields, and we'll talk a bit about how we can lead through a crisis in our respective fields. And I have no doubt that we'll be gaining really valuable insights today and tangible takeaways. So without further ado, I will jump right in and pose my first question to Sandy from TDCX. Sandy, how do you think managers can prepare to effectively manage any traumatic workplace event?
Yes, Winnie. Hello, everyone. And in the interest of time, I will also jump right in, but I will also give a little bit of information of how our program is run at TDCX. To answer your question, to prepare managers to effectively manage a traumatic workplace, it is crucial for organizations to provide a relevant upskilling training opportunities to the staff. At TDCX, our managers and supervisors are enrolled in a course or leadership course called Psychological First Aid and Resiliency courses as well. This helps raise awareness on the impact that they or their team may be experiencing during this traumatic time. And this also support in self-regulation practices. These trainings assist in identifying warning signs, demonstrating and providing stress management techniques also for the managers themselves as well as the team.
Thanks, Eddie. Do you have anything to add to that, Crystal?
Morning, everyone. Yeah, I actually really echo with what Sandy was saying. When clients come to us and ask, how can we actually support the managers during, crisis times, and also how to manage their employees when employees are going through a crisis, we always recommend that they train their managers using taking them to psychological first aid courses. And with psychological first aid courses, the managers are actually taught with communication skills. They're taught with how to actually emotionally support their employees during crisis, and also give them like the strategies and the tools to enable the managers to provide that kind of communication skills, reflective listening skills, even their own self-care and stress management strategies for themselves. Because managers are always usually the first line responders for their teams, they also need that type of self-care and stress management strategies for themselves in order for them to be able to support their teams.
Absolutely. So it's kind of like a toolkit that we can provide to the managers so that in an event of a difficult situation, they have the resources and the tools, if you need, to effectively manage the situation. Ting, do you have any last thoughts on this?
Yes, thanks, Winnie, and good morning, everyone. I agree with what Sandy and Crystal were sharing. Providing training to managers and preparing them is very important. When a traumatic workplace event happens, as Crystal just mentioned, managers are usually the first ones to take actions and for people to reach out to. And oftentimes, managers may have to break the bad news or provide constant and regular updates. So rehearsing the conversation is very helpful. And if there is an employee assistance program in place, managers can reach out for manager consultation. We have had managers reaching out to us to discuss strategies and tips for breaking bad news and how to support employees during a crisis or after a workplace traumatic event. So that can prepare managers practically and mentally as well. As Crystal mentioned, self-care for managers is very important, especially after or during a traumatic workplace event. And another important thing for managers to note is that it is okay if you don't have the answers to employees' questions, and it is okay to say, I don't know. So sometimes managers may feel that I would need to have all the information for my employees, but it's actually okay to just give it a little bit more time and then say, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point, Ting, because oftentimes managers feel like they need to have all the answers, but the truth is we're only human. And as we live through difficult situations that are often changing and adapting, it is only expected that we don't have the answers to everything. And with that, I agree that transparency and honesty to say, I actually don't have the answer to this right now, but I will find out for you. And I think that's an important thing for managers to understand. So thank you, ladies. I would like to move on to my next question. And I will pose this question to Crystal from Bersamash. What type of support do managers themselves need to lead through a crisis and not sacrifice their own mental well-being?
I really like this question, Winnie, because like just now when we're talking about PFA, right? It's not enough to keep stressing that managers are still humans, right? And when we go through any crisis, we need to have the strategies in place ourselves. And in order to support their teams, they need to actually realize that, hey, I need to take care of my own well-being. I need to take care of my own mental health first, even before a crisis hits. They need to like have some self-care strategies, daily, either exercise, proper nutrition, proper sleep. These are important factors that they need to take care of so that they don't sacrifice their own mental well-being when crisis hits. So it's to actually have to follow a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping a sense, having a pulse of how they're doing is absolutely important, because we don't want to go into it thinking that we can do it all. only to realize that we're not in a good place ourselves, because unless our cup is full, it is going to be quite difficult for us to take care of others. I know you have additional thoughts on this, Sandy.
Yes, Winnie. I'll add on to Crystal, and I do absolutely agree with Crystal. I think managers, it's encouraged for managers to sort of set a good example in terms of self-care, and I think the managers would really benefit from having a consistent, dedicated source of support, either in the form of professional coaching, therapy, well-being sessions, even EAP services, because this will help the managers cope and engage in emotional regulation, and that's what is very important, especially while leading to the crisis. I think this is the very same concept as the self-care oxygen mask analogy, that you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you lead the team. At TDCX, we do have a dedicated well-being team, well-being and resiliency team, and we started a project during the pandemic called Project Catharsis. And as the name suggests, this is a space for the managers, for the supervisors to express themselves, just have that safe space to share how they're feeling. And in the process, we found that it received very positive feedback, because very soon we're seeing managers moving from expressing themselves to, okay, let's do something more fun, let's do something more engaging, more productive. So there.
I really like that. I like that, you know, at TDCX to take a very proactive approach to taking care of the managers and not waiting for them to say, hey, I have a problem or I'm feeling bad, but giving them a space where they can let out what they need to let out so that they can then take care of your team as well. Thanks, Sandy. Ting, what do you think?
Yes, I absolutely echo what Crystal and Sandy were sharing. Definitely self-care is one of the most important factors when it comes to mental health or well-being. It is important for managers to continuously check in with themselves on how they are doing. Am I doing okay as a manager? Am I coping well as a manager? Am I needing support myself? And if so, what sort of support do I need? And if needed, I think that it is important to reach out for support for managers themselves, reach out to the peers, and sometimes peer support within the organization can be very helpful, and reaching out to their own management team and have a conversation, or HR for support if needed. Or of course, if they feel that more external support will be needed, they can reach out to the employee assistance program if there's one in place, or any other resources that can have some sort of counseling or mental health resources. And apart from that, managers also need to know their limits and be okay with it. So that is not always an easy thing to remember, but a very good thing to take away is that there's only that much a manager can do. So don't expect to resolve everything for the employees. So be okay with it, and be okay with the boundaries between yourself and employees, and be okay with the fact that there's only that much that manager can do. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good message. I agree with that, because ultimately we're humans. We cannot do it all. We can only do our best. And if I'm hearing right from all of you, the message that we want to send to managers is that, number one, it is okay to not be okay. And number two, it is absolutely okay to seek help when you're not okay. And this in turn then sets a positive role modeling situation for your employees, for the employees, so that they know that if my manager is courageous enough to seek help, then I can too. So moving on swiftly to the next question. I would like to pose this question to you, Ting, first. How can managers keep a pulse of the team and help anyone who may be struggling?
Okay, thanks, Winnie. I think it is important for managers to make an effort to check in with their team members on a regular basis, such as scheduling regular team meetings and regular one-on-ones, especially now most of us are working remotely. And check with them on how they are doing at work and also in their personal lives. So don't just simply focus the conversation about work. And from those conversations, you may be able to identify some of the employees who may be struggling, especially from the one-on-one conversations. So some of the questions you can ask, such as, are they showing up in a meeting? Are they constantly late for the meeting? Are they actually withdrawn from the conversations? And are they able to concentrate? And are there any behavioral changes? Are they being themselves? And for those employees who may be struggling, I think that it is helpful to check in with them a little bit more. And when talking to them, it is crucial for managers to show compassion and understanding towards the issues they are facing. And make sure that you allocate enough amount of time for them, not having to rush, not having to multitask, be present for them, and make appropriate eye contact and try to avoid any distractions, especially now most meetings are done remotely. And if you're checking your phone, even though perhaps that your eyes are looking at the screen, it's actually very easy to tell that you're checking your phone. So make sure that you are not having those distractions and be present during the meeting when talking to them. And another thing I think I would like to talk about is it is important to listen to them and do not deny their experience, do not label their emotions as right or wrong, and do not make assumptions because the feelings your employees are going through are actually very real for them. And ask what sort of support that they need, ask what you can do to support them. And if they're ready to talk, and that's great. But if they're not ready to talk, and that's okay too. Just let them know you are there for them and encourage them to reach out for support and provide them with the resources, any internal resources that you can provide to them or any external resources, such as any training program, employee assistance program, and really encourage them that it is okay to reach out for support. And of course, if the manager yourself needs support, and definitely reach out for support on how to support an employee who may be struggling or an employee who may be at risk. So those are the things that you can reach out for support, or maybe just check in on how you're doing yourself as a manager, some of the self-care strategies, self-care tools. So those are the things that I think it is important for managers to take care of or to take note.
Thanks, Ting, for that very comprehensive answer. Crystal, do you have anything to add to that?
Just to add to what Ting was saying, the consistent check-ins are important. I think what managers should also have is what we call like an open door policy, not like a full day open door, because we know managers are also really, really busy. And if it's like a full day open door, everyone's going to come to you and you're never going to get the work done. So usually what we suggest is like maybe an hour a day where your team can just ping you or call you, and you have that open door where you're, maybe what you call a coffee session with your teammates, right? It could be a one-on-one, or it could be, a group coffee session each week. That helps to kind of break the ice versus a proper formal team meeting. And people don't really want to talk about things during team meetings, but we've seen that when you label it as a coffee session, a catch-up session, you take away that resistance to actually speaking up, because you know that, hey, this is an open door policy. I can speak my mind. My manager, keeps it confidentially if needed, and I feel comfortable talking about things. The other point that that we've seen a lot of teams do is managers actually assign a peer, or what we call an ambassador in their team, to have that open door policy, so that teammates actually go to that peer or ambassador versus the manager, and the ambassador or the peer is actually trained to talk to the employee, to gather any thoughts or feelings that they have, and usually whatever they've gathered from the teammates, they put it down in an anonymous survey for the manager themselves to actually say, hey, this is what's going on in your team. Maybe that's something you need to look at. So the person that's sharing to the ambassador or the peer feels a lot more comfortable and open in order to share their real feelings, right? Versus sometimes having the term, I don't really want to speak to my manager, just in case my manager thinks I'm not good enough or not competent enough to do my role. So I better keep this to myself. So I think sometimes people looking at a peer-to-peer, there's less resistance, we feel.
I really like the suggestion of having this coffee session thing. And for those of us who are working from home, you might be wondering how am I going to do this? You know, we're not in the office together anymore. You know, where we are, we actually do it virtually. You know, we call it like the water cooler session, where you know we meet at the virtual water cooler. We're encouraged to bring our own drinks, you know, and our own snacks, and you know, just check in and not talk about work. And you know, an informal setting like that can really have people let their guard down a bit and feel more comfortable in opening up and sharing. But thanks too for that very comprehensive answer, Crystal. Sandy, any last comments to wrap this question up?
Yes, thank you, Winnie. Just to add on to Crystal, I think it's very important for managers to create an environment that emphasizes the staff to be empowered to speak up. And even the one-on-one sessions, what we have found is sometimes employees don't want to talk about work. So it's okay to even ask them about themselves, what's going on in their daily life. So that builds trust for the employees that yes, I can talk to my manager about non-work related matters as well. And we've also created what is called like a pulse check, where it's not just a bottom down, but it's more like a 360 awareness of creating support program like peer-to-peer observation, because employees, they work with their colleagues every day, so they know if anything's wrong, if they're not performing their best. So we've created this 360 degrees program, and I think this will be very beneficial for the managers to keep a pulse check of their team.
Absolutely, especially again now we are mostly working virtually, a lot of us anyway. So we don't have the ability to see someone physically. We won't be able to pick up very obvious signs like, oh, you know, this person who usually is very put together, or you know, always punctual is now late, or maybe now looking a little disheveled. You know, all of these are big cues that a manager can use that maybe we don't have now. So having this pulse check is going to be really important information that we can use as well. Thanks, Sandy. So I actually have a quick poll now for our audience. I would like to check with all of you. How frequently do you check in with your team members? Is it 8 times a month, 4 times a month, or 2 times a month, or you're not sure? And when we say check in, it could be informal or formal. Basically, anytime you reach out to them, it's considered a check-in. So you can quickly put in your answers. Wow. So I'm pretty impressed with the results. 41% of you check in with your team at least 8 times a month. 7% of you don't know, maybe because it's more than that, that you can't keep track. But this is a good start. I think it's important in this time to check in actually even more than we did before. So thank you for your answers. So can we move on to the next question? I would like to pose this question to you, Sandy. What are some measures, resources, or tools that TDCX has put in place towards the care of the employees' mental well-being?
Yes, Winnie, I'll be very excited to share some of the work that we do at TDCX. So TDCX, we are a people company, and we do work with different departments focusing on the 3 initiatives, which is Be Kinder, Be More, and Be Greener. And at TDCX, there are 12,000 employees. However, my team, the Wellbeing Resiliency team, we support 1,200 staff under a specific project. And under our clients, what we do is we have 15 counselors who provide, let's just say, mental health support, either in the form of one-on-one sessions, group sessions, psychoeducation, different activities. So what we do is we have a culture where all the new employees are introduced to the mental health, the concept of mental health. We have this thing called 7 weeks of onboarding program, where all the staff are introduced to the topics of art therapy, mindfulness, stress management, resilience, and also communication and problem-solving skills as well. So, and they are aware that there is a dedicated well-being time for them that they can request at any time. And I think it's also important to address that the well-being program is completely separated from HR, which means that our employees know that they can come in on the days that they don't feel 100%, and it's okay for them to ask for help. So this is a completely independent department that we only report to our regional director regional account director for Singapore and Thailand. So now at the program level, what we have found is that during the pandemic, we had the feedback where our staff were saying that it's okay now. We are okay. We've expressed what we feel, and now we are ready to have fun. So this is a really good indicator that it's not just it's okay not to be okay, but we have moved into it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to be happy even during the times of pandemic. So we bring in different topics, and we try to forecast what are the events that are coming up, what are the directions from the management. Right? Just to give you specific examples, for New Year's, we know that a lot of our staff who are from Southeast Asian countries could not go home. So we introduced a topic called Holidays Nostalgia, where we address homesickness, we address parts of grief, you know, like loss of autonomy, hopelessness, and this was very beneficial and in the beginning of the year, we discuss what anyone would discuss, just bringing in the sense of normalcy. For example, what's your New Year's resolution? Right? Because this is something that we would talk about if besides the pandemic. In February, it's Valentine's. We didn't discuss Valentine's, but we talked about happy chemicals. You know, the 4 happy chemicals: the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin, and how can we use our activities in our daily life to promote happy chemicals. And happy to report that last year we conducted 26,000 well-being sessions, and only 0.4% of EAP were utilized. So just want to say that we feel that this was a very successful program that we ran despite the pandemic.
Yeah, that's very impressive, Sandy. Well, thanks for sharing all of that. I think what I'm hearing again is that taking that proactive approach is so important. You know, I think more and more we realize that it's more effective to be proactive and initiated in providing that caring space for people rather than taking a reactive approach, which is to wait for people to come to say, hey, you know what, I'm not feeling good, but rather, hey, I know that you may not feel good because of this that may be happening. So this is what we have in place for you. So thanks, Sandy. Ting, what does workplace options do? Can you tell us a bit more?
Yes, absolutely. So for workplace options, we have a few different measures and resources or tools that's put in place towards the care of the employee's mental well-being. So I'm just going to choose some of them to share here in the interest of the time. So we have global COVID resources available for our clinicians and clients. So usually clinicians can use those resources to support themselves and their family members. And of course, supporting our participants all over the world and their family members as well, if they reach out for support. And we have this platform, which is one of my favorite, which is called Yammer. And it is like a Facebook for workplace options. It is a place for our global employees to connect with each other, both professionally and personally. There are different interest groups and different communities, such as reading, cooking, music, movies. People would share their experience or post pictures there. It's actually quite fun. It's one of the things that I think that's quite important for the mental well-being, just to really having fun at workplace. And we have our clinical corner community and a community called WPO Cares, where we engage in well-being conversations and share mental health resources with each other. Recently, we have had our Q2 Global Wellness Challenge, which is called Healthy Habit Bingo Challenge for 30 days. How it works is that every day there will be a different challenge in terms of health and wellness. I have participated in the challenge myself, and it is quite fun. So, this is really another thing to remind our managers here. As Crystal was mentioning previously in one of the questions, make sure that you take care of yourself physically as well, apart from taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally. Make sure you eat properly, have balanced nutrition, keep yourself hydrated, get enough rest, exercise, and have some me time for yourself.
Yeah, all really commonsensical things, but we all need reminders to it. All of us. Crystal, would you like to share a bit about what Mercer Bush does?
Well, those what Jing and Sandy are sharing are pretty impressive. I should take some tips from Mercer Marsh as well. But what we really do for our employees is that we have a what we call a off roles can flex. So everyone in different roles can actually flex. So that's the idea, that because everyone has their own, different lifestyles. For example, if you have a family and right now with the pandemic you're stuck at home, you can't really like sometimes go to the office a lot, especially if young kids. So, and with that, our CEO has actually set up this All Roles Can Flex program that no matter where you are, no matter what role you're at, we make sure that you have that flexible working arrangement. So that's one. And also we have, of course, the EAP in place to support everyone else during, whether they have a crisis or just want someone to talk to. That hotline is available for everyone. We've also just set up a Fresh Fridays, where every lunchtime during Fridays we'll have Zoom sessions on yoga, Zumba, even mental well-being talks. So that's a lot of things in place to support Mercer employees. As for our clients, how we support them is that we always put in place a full calendar year of well-being activities that touches the four well-being pillars, which is physical, mental, social, and financial. So that's also what we also do Mercer internally, that we make sure that we always have activities that focus on all four pillars, because we know that mental well-being is a big topic and it's huge, and mental well-being is a priority. But we also need to, like Ding was saying, we need to remember that we need to take care of our own physical health first, and social health and financial health can't be forgotten as well. So I think, well-being, besides mental well-being, it's like a holistic framework that we focus on.
Yeah, thanks, Crystal. Well, that's pretty impressive too. I particularly like Friday. I think if we have Friday, we should have Friday. So I'd like to move on to the next question. And I would like to pose this question to you, Crystal, first. What would be some of our main considerations when coping with uncertainty and changes in the workplace?
I think when, uncertainty and changes always happen, right? We can't get away from that. Even in our own personal lives, changes always happen, right? Becoming a new parent is a change. Changing roles within internally is a change. Having new colleagues is also a change, right? And if your manager leaves your team, that can be a huge change. That also can be a crisis to the team, because most of the time when managers leave, that they leave behind a huge team that may like them or were used to them, and then now they leave, they can leave an empty space. So I think when coping with uncertainty and changes in the workplace, organizations need to be prepared to have some solutions in place when changes happen. Especially when either crisis happens or a manager leaves, because people do leave, or a team member passes away, there's bereavement. These are different uncertainty, different changes that employees cope with, and they always need this proper solutions in place already from the organization to actually cope. One thing that we've seen that if, say, an uncertainty happens in Mercer, we have the EAP to call, and with the EAP to call, we can get an on-site counselor in place for the team if needed, or we can have a 30-day hotline with the EAP to actually, like yourselves, Workplace Options, to actually provide that support to the team, or just provide a support to the department themselves. So I think these are some of the main considerations that we need to remember as an organization, to always have it in place before something happens.
Absolutely. So again, the theme that I'm hearing today is to be prepared and have all the resources in place and not wait for something to happen and then scramble to get it done. Sandy, thoughts from you?
Yes, just to add on to Crystal, I do absolutely agree. In the face of uncertainty, I think what is important is to address how the situation affects each person. And then based on that, we can encourage and create a plan to support each individual. And after we have addressed the issue, what we have found in our program is that bringing in positive distraction really helps the recovery rate, because this is where we are seeing that our staff are not talking about anxieties anymore. They just want to engage in activities. They want to do fun activities. Like this month, we are bringing in the topic about music. So even doing sessions online, we have staff who are bringing in the guitars, and the whole session is singing along. So that really creates a positive environment and positive energy, especially during these times, just promoting normalcy and how we can continue to build resilience on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I like hearing that there's so many different ideas, so many different things that are done, because one of the main things we need to remember is that different people cope very differently with uncertainty and change, you know, and we can't expect that there is a one-size-fits-all approach. So having all these different options is important, and it's going to be very meaningful for people, because then they can choose what makes the most sense for them, you know. Ting, any last words to wrap this question up?
Yes. So I completely agree with what Crystal and Sandy were sharing. As Crystal mentioned, change is really inevitable, especially during a pandemic like this, and people will have reactions to change. As you mentioned, Winnie, that people will react to the change differently. Some people may be completely okay with it. Some people may have strong reactions to it. And, so it is important for managers to understand that different reactions are natural, and it is okay for employees to have those reactions. And in the meantime, it is okay for managers to have some reactions as well. And just a little bit more information about some of the reactions that employees or managers may be experiencing. So we have seen a lot of people reaching out to us, and physically they may have headaches, tightness in the chest, feeling tired and fatigue. Emotionally, they may feel anxious about the change. They may be fearful of the unknown and uncertainties. They may feel overwhelmed of having to consider a lot of things around the change. And there may be poor concentration at work after a change as well. So I would advise managers to acknowledge those reactions instead of ignoring them or pretending that everybody is okay. And so it is important for managers to let the employees know what the company is doing to manage the change. What are some of the measures and the resources that the company is providing, and provide them with internal and external resources that's available to them. So as we have mentioned, making sure that they are reaching out for support, to sort of process their reactions towards the change and develop some healthy coping strategies.
Yeah, thank you, Ting, for that. I absolutely agree with all of that. And I think one very important tool that companies can use, and that's something that we do at Workplace Options, is to collect anonymous feedback from the entire organization. We do this twice a year, and to get a pulse of how people are feeling about anything that may be going on in the organization. And because it's anonymous, people will feel a bit more open to sharing, what they're truly feeling. And the survey includes questions like, how do you feel about the state of organizations right now? Is there anything that you have feedback on to make things better? How are you feeling with regards to your relationship with your manager? All of this, which are important information to have, and will be really useful, in helping an organization very quickly change and adapt if there are any difficulties or uncertainties that may be happening in the organization, allowing the organization to be a lot more agile in the way they make their decisions. So I actually am going to move on to our very last question for today. It's a little bit of a heavier one. I would like maybe to pose it to you first, Ting. In the event of grief or loss in an organization, in say your organization, what are some aspects that should be paid more attention to while managing the situation?
Okay, yes, I think it is important to understand that everyone grieves in a different way, and they may show different reactions. So it is important to normalize those reactions, and it is okay if an employee's response is different from someone else. And so do not judge them and do not view their reactions to grief as abnormal. So take the time to check in with the team to see how they are doing and how they have been impacted by the loss. Listen to them in a compassionate way and ask what sort of support that they need. And one thing that I also feel important is to encourage employees to express their reactions in healthy and appropriate ways. Because sometimes it might be easy for employees to get into drinking or maybe binge eating, taking a lot of junk food, or sleeping too much or not having sleeping at all. So those are not so-called healthy ways of coping. So managers can encourage them to cope in healthy and appropriate ways and be a model for them as well. And apart from that, such as talking to friends and family, keeping a journal, reaching out to the EAP for support, and talk to a counselor if there is one in place. And another thing is everyone's grief process is different. So some people may be okay after a couple of weeks. Some people may take a couple of months, and some other people may take half a year or even longer. And that is okay. So there is no right or wrong time frame for a grief process. So that's something to remember. And of course, allow time and opportunities for employees to process their grief. So if it is possible, managers can get the employees together as a team and share memories of the deceased employee. They can also call up to the employee assistance program if there's one in place to arrange for a grief counselor to be available to provide psychological first aid for crisis response. So in the past year, we have seen a lot of numbers of requests from all over the world requesting crisis response, requesting an on-site counselor or a remote counselor. It's not necessarily about grief and loss in your workplace, but also perhaps managing change, and then just to sort of encouraging people to reach out for support, and having the EAP presence there so that employees can be more comfortable and knowing that support is available to them. So yeah, so those are some of my thoughts about this question.
Thanks, Ting. Crystal, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times when people go through grief or loss, we're very fast, to want to reach out. We're very fast to be like, oh, how are you? How's everything? What happened? I think people need to kind of not do that immediately, but to give that space and respect to the person who's actually lost someone or is going through grief, to have that space to grieve or have that space to actually process what has happened. And then, when they're ready, you can see it, then you go and say, hey, how are you? Or during the time when they're grieving, you can say, hey, I know you don't want to talk about it right now, but I'll give you that space, and when you're ready, I'm always here. I'm always here to have, you can cry on my shoulder, or you want to talk about it, want to process it, it's not a problem. So I think managers need to remember that it's not to go straight ahead and directly ask the question, but to actually just provide that support. The family members of the loved ones will also appreciate that, maybe sending a gift hamper or sending, like, hey, anytime that you need resources, this is the EAP, this is the number, call them if needed. So just, like I said, respecting the space, giving that flexibility for the employee who has lost someone or is going through grief, to come back to you to talk about it, or maybe some time off. Where a lot of companies have bereavement leave, I know. Give them that time off to process, and when they're ready or if they need more time, have that flexibility to be given to them.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Crystal, because I absolutely agree with that. there actually is research to show that when somebody goes through a difficult situation or a traumatic situation, it's actually healthier to allow them to take time to process it themselves, before forcing them to relive the difficult or traumatic situation immediately again, which can actually sometimes do more harm than good. And we all need to remember that when we go through something difficult, usually the first people that we want to talk to would be our loved ones, people that we're close to at home or a close friend, So it is important to respect that space and to say to someone, I'm really sorry for what's happened, and I'm here if you need, but take your time and not force them to say, tell me how you're feeling, I need to know, so I can help you. While those intentions are good, and kind, I think we need to be very mindful that sometimes people need more time, sometimes they need less time, and it's important to just let them know that my door is open and we're here to support you when we need. Sandy, any final comments?
Yes, I think Jane and Crystal have covered it really well. Just want to add, in terms of the organization, I think it would be beneficial for organizations to have a crisis protocol, because this will ensure that organizations can provide proactive assistance to their employees, and the employees themselves also can feel that they can access the support when they require. And as Crystal mentioned, we do have we have a program in place where it's called peer-to-peer support, and we do get comments, and we do get contacted for their colleagues who may having high absenteeism or having declining work performance, or maybe acting differently at work. But then, as Crystal mentioned, we have to be careful if they need the support or if they need the time to themselves at the moment. Right? And also we have brief counseling that's provided. We've had sessions where our staff had strong physical reaction in response to a traumatic event. But by the end of the session, it's really nice to see someone sitting across you, really nice, calm, and composed. And what we ended up doing was creating this safety plan, or as we would like to call it, the gentleman's agreement, on what are the steps that they will do to take care of themselves and how much they would be okay with us contacting them, or how frequently would it be is it okay to speak once a day or once a week. So I think these types of protocols would really help in the event of loss and grief.
Absolutely, respecting and getting the consent, in what would be the best way they would like the company to approach them or the managers to approach them. And again, in hearing all of your answers today, the big theme that I see is that we want to move to an environment where we are proactive, initiated, and prepared, in how we take care of the well-being of our teams, and not have it be a reactive kind of response, which is what we sometimes do see in our line of work, where something bad happens and the organization does scramble because they're not prepared to how to handle a situation like that. So I think the message here is that it's important to be mindful that these are all the things that could happen, and these are some of the tools, resources, and platforms that can be utilized and used to take care and be prepared for anything that might happen. So I would like to wrap this session up before we move into the Q&A for a quick audience poll, where everyone will get about a minute to tell us, how would you rate your crisis response program? So is it good? Is it fair? Is it poor? Or do you not have one at all? So we'll give everyone just about 30 seconds more. Okay, so again, the numbers are pretty interesting here to me. About 46% of you say that you have a good crisis response program, so a little bit less than half. About 29% says it's fair, could be better, and a further 13% says actually we're not prepared for a crisis. And a further 13% says we don't even have one. So I think this tells us a very important message that we need to have a crisis response program in place, because that is what will help us react in an effective way if anything does happen in the organization, and it will allow the employees to feel taken care of in a difficult situation. And we don't want to definitely be in a situation where we catch ourselves scrambling and wondering, okay, what do I do next? So it's always better to be prepared. And with that, I would like to pick out some questions, if there are any. Okay, so I have one question here that I think you guys might be interested in. How do we monitor employees who are working remotely that struggle with the distractions occurring from the family situation? I think this is a very good question because everyone will have some distractions at home, just a different severity. So, Crystal, maybe do you want to take that for us?
The question is, how do we monitor the employee? Correct?
Yeah, who are working remotely and that you're aware they're going through some distractions at home.
Okay. So I think like what we have talked about a lot today is on that pulse check. Maybe this employee needs a little bit more pulse checks, more check-ins with you one-on-one, and not make it as if like you are checking in on them all the time, but make sure that the check-ins are very, like I said, informal, so that the employee is able to be open with you and say, hey, you know, I am feeling a little bit more distracted, or I really need some time off, and this distraction is really causing my work to be productive, and I'm not doing very well. So I think as a manager is to provide that space for them to talk about it, and then provide that area to kind of brainstorm as what will work for them. If you know currently remote working is the default, and there's no way that you can you know, go back to the office, then maybe sometimes we have seen some managers say, you know what, maybe you take 2 days off, you know, manage that, and then 3 days you're working. So offer that what we call like, you know, a flexible work environment. If it really doesn't work for them, say, you know, maybe 2 to 5 p.m. doesn't work for you because the kid is awake, then say, it's okay. You don't have to be online for that 2 to 5 p.m. You can be online from that 5 to 10 p.m. That works for you. So I think that it's not allow as much flexibility as you can to the employee, shows that support and care and concern that the organization or the manager has for the employee.
Yeah, I agree. So having that genuine positive regard always helps. You know, having that rapport with your team will then allow them to feel more comfortable and open to sharing, you know, with the manager. Because oftentimes we are afraid to share with our managers what we're going through for fear of being judged, or, you know, for what this might mean for their work, you know. So that's some really good tips, Crystal. Thank you. And in the interest of time, I would like to move on to the next question, which is actually posed to you, Sandy. So this participant says, thanks for your point on also focusing on happiness during the pandemic. Ever since the pandemic started, I feel like I've been on intermission mode or waiting for better days. I think we all have been through that and are going through that, or even emergency mode. So what kind of activities can we do at work and at home during this pandemic that could bring happiness and thriving back into our conversations and mindset? Very good question.
Thank you, Vinny. That's actually a very, very good question. And this is something that we have addressed frequently, because in an emergency situation, sometimes we feel obligated that we have to think about it. We have to ruminate. We have to pay so much attention to it. And if we are not constantly on the go, if we're not anxious about it, we're not giving it the importance that it needs. However, and we've addressed this frequently, that because the situation requires your attention, one is you need to have proper self-care. And in the work environment, actually, what a lot of the meetings, it actually started from my team. What we do before the meetings is we call this moment to arrive, where we take 3 to 5 minutes just to take turns to do a guided meditation, and just to relax and for 2-3 minutes, put your expectations, your anxiety aside, and just focus. Just be in the room, be here, so that you're not distracted by outside external demands. And just from there, it just starts off from the meeting. And at a corporate level, what we have done is we have engaged with the engagement team, who are very good at planning, who are very good at bringing in activities. So we work with them, and we add this, what we call this fun, as I've mentioned, positive distractions, but also bringing the benefits of psychological benefits, something that they can learn, aspects of psychoeducation as well. I'm not sure if that helped answer, but I think that even the managers can create this environment in the team as well. Just doing some group activities. We've had in the meetings, what we have encouraged one of the managers to do is also even ask random questions, like what's on top of your fridge, you know, so people take turns answering, and becomes this really happy energy in the team meeting as well.
Yeah, so I think that's really helpful, Sandy. And I think the takeaway for me, at least from your answer, is that it doesn't have to be complicated. You know, the simplest things can allow us to feel like we are thriving again, even if it's a very, very simple thing that we do to make a little change in our lives. So I hope that's useful for you, Raiden, who asked this question. In the interest of time, I'm going to pick one last question to wrap this up. And this question would be, how do we continue to build a positive culture of teamwork when we remain away from each other, working from home, and unable to meet as a company? I think a lot of people have questions about this. Ting, would you like to take this one?
Yes, absolutely. I think the key is being a supportive manager. And just now we did talk about constantly or regularly check in with your team members. And some of the activities that Sandy was sharing, I think that's very helpful to put in our team meetings. So when it comes to the team meetings, not only focus about work, but also have some fun activities that people can do together, or maybe some icebreaker activities to get to know more about each other. And if there's a new hire happening to join us in the team, and that's something can be sort of focused on as well, and to get to know about each other, about their personal life, their personal hobbies and things like that. And as we have mentioned, if there is someone who is showing some of the behavior changes in the team meeting, perhaps they were previously quite talkative, but now during the meetings they have, you know, experienced some changes, saying, for example, being silent, or maybe not really wanting to talk, or maybe not wanting to really engage with each other. And then manager can reach out to the person individually, and then to check in with them on a regular basis. And so one thing is to really acknowledge that, you know, so now the reality is like this, and as a team, what can we do to make things better for us? And if things are not getting better, if we're not getting back to the office anytime soon, what can we do as a team to, you know, make the best of it? And what can we really build a resiliency together as a team? So those are the questions that not really simply the manager can answer. It's actually a question posting to the team. What do you feel that we can do to make things better for the team, for all of us? So what I'm trying to say, I think, just to summarize, that for team building or for building resiliency during the organization, it is not only about the manager's decisions, or not only about what managers think that employees can do. It's actually about the whole conversations and discussions, what employees feel that, you know, this is actually good to me. So it's always important to have that feedback session or feedback platform for the employees to just say, what do I need? What do we think that we need to make things better, even though we're not able to go back to the office anytime soon? And what can we do to make things easier for all of us as a team? So I think that's important, just to have that feedback platform, and then having a mutual discussion between employees and the managers.
I absolutely agree. Getting that feedback from the team is so important because we may be surprised that they will give us ideas that we may be blindsided to, and ultimately they are the ones who will be the users of this, so their feedback will be so beneficial, to get. And in the end, again, the message is it doesn't have to be a difficult or complicated thing. Sometimes the simplest changes or introductions can make a big difference in the culture of a team. So with that, thank you so much for all your questions. This question and all the other questions that unfortunately we weren't able to address, but thanks Raiden and Bobby too for your questions. And I would like to thank all of you again for being here. I know that we weren't able to address all your questions. However, we would like to do this session or session like that sometime again soon, where you can ask us questions. And outside of that, obviously, you can reach out to any of us, online. We'll be happy to engage with you. I have no doubt. If you have any further questions or ideas that you want to talk about. And with that, I'll hand it over to the panelists. Sam, if you want to say some last word.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. So it has been a great session. Thanks all the panelists for the session. Just want to let the audience know we have a post-event survey. So please share your feedbacks. Let us know any questions you have. Any other topics you'd like us to kind of organize around that. And yeah, that's really all we have for today. And we hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you.